Hello everyone and welcome to Big Rock Moto. Thank you so much for tuning in today. In today's video on the 2024 Husqvarna FE501S Dual Sport, we're going to do a few things. I'm going to show you and talk you through all the modifications and upgrades that I've done to this bike over the past 4 to 6 months, the reasoning behind them, the cost behind them. We'll look at the total cost of all of these upgrades, which is eye-watering. I'll just tell you up front, and then we'll talk about maybe whether that's worth it or not. We're also going to ride the bike on and off-road, give you some riding impressions now that we have 95% of the upgrades done. I'm also going to talk about some comparisons to other bikes, like should you get the KTM, should you get the Honda, should you get a 690, things like that. And I'll talk through some of the pros and cons, if there's anything in particular that I don't like about this bike or this build overall. Right up front, a couple disclaimers because I believe in being extremely transparent on this channel. One is that some of the parts for this build I did receive for free, so I want you to know that. Some things I did pay for, some things I got a discount, and then there was a good number of things that I did get free of charge. Many of which, if I do sell the bike or get rid of the bike or whatever, I do have to send back to the manufacturers. So I don't really get to keep the stuff. Anyway, I just wanted to put that out there. And then also, if you use my links below to purchase parts for your KTM, Husky, Honda, or whatever dual sport you have, first of all, I hope you will use those links because it's a way that this channel remains financially sustainable. So please do that, and thank you for doing that. Use my links when you're shopping at Moto, Revzilla, Rocky Mountain ATV, and other companies I have linked below. But I do get a small commission from most of those products if you do use my affiliate links. So please do that, and also thank you for doing that, but also that's my disclaimer as well. So I wanted to talk about Moto just a little bit. So I worked with them extensively on setting this bike up, especially when it comes to the ECU tuning, getting that dialed in, the suspension, and a lot of the the custom parts you see here that Moto either sources or makes in-house themselves, especially the electrical stuff. But they have a custom bike builder or an ultimate bike build program that they offer. So what they can do is they can work with you, and I'm not involved in this, by the way, and I don't get a commission from this part, but they can work with you and help you, get your KTM or Husky or Honda, and then figure out and even install for you all the best, absolute best, top-notch aftermarket stuff, get the tuning done, get the suspension done, whatever you might want to do. So they have a program for that, so you should contact Moto if you have interest in doing that, if you're not really that DIY person like I am. So I just wanted to put that out there. All right, I've pulled the bike inside the studio here. I want to walk around the bike, talk about the modifications that have been done. Just figured it'd be a little bit easier, better lighting, quieter to do this inside. Now, we've kind of done this, bike build in phases. I did some more detailed videos on some of the early parts that I installed, but I think it's just easier now to kind of go through everything at once. I'll try to touch briefly on what the part is, kind of what the modification is, why I did it, and if I like it or don't like it. So, and of course, in the cost section, I'm showing the spreadsheet and talking about the detailed costs and some of the little things that I might forget. So starting with the front tire, the Moto's Tractionator Enduro ST or soft terrain. This is the fatty front tire, so it's a 9100/21, so it's a little bit wider. Great traction, great ride feel. It is DOT approved, which is surprising, but good. I really like this tire. It's not having any weird wear, and it works great on dirt roads, sand, mud, cornering. Just super, super happy with that tire. There's a lot of good tires out there. A lot of people like the Shinko cheater tires. There's a golden tire that people like. I've used that one. That one's also good. But overall, I think the Moto's is really nice. Now, you can see the wheel weights here. So these little brass colored wheel weights, so these are a Moto item. I had to add a little bit more with that black stick-on one. When you put rim locks on, and you can see the rim locks here, which are Tusk aluminum light lock rim locks. You need the rim lock to prevent the tire from spinning on the rim when you have low pressures, but then you need to balance out that weight of the rim lock with these weights. I like these weights that clamp on to the spokes because they're easy to put on, and you can get them in some of the heavier sizes which you need for the rear wheel, which we'll show in a minute. So I like that. So this Acerbis front disc guard, it's just okay. It was kind of a pain to install, and it's not really that tough. It doesn't seem to be that strong, so it's you know, protect from maybe some sticks or something, but it's not really like an impact protector. So I would go with the Moto, whatever they sell for the disc guard, which is a different brand, and I should have gone with that. I don't know how I ended up with this Acerbis one, but I did. So anyway, that's just okay, but I'd recommend getting a stronger one. Let's talk about the frontline suspension modification. So Moto works with Ryan at Frontline Suspension, and they can take your suspension and spring it and valve it for your weight and your particular riding style. What that's going to do is make sure that the bike is set up, again, for how much you weigh and how you're riding. It's transformational for the bike when you have proper suspension. So they can set it up for, you know, if you're more of a racer, desert racing, or if you're more of a trail rider, however you want to do it, they can set it up, and it's transformational from the stock setup. You can ride so much more faster and such more control. And even though the 2024 bike does have the best suspension that these have had in years, now with a new closed cartridge front forks, getting away from the Explorer stuff, still, this is a massive improvement by getting it set up for yourself. So I highly recommend that. That is something that I would definitely think that you should look into doing. I've got these Canyon Dancer tie-down loops here in the lower triple clamps. These are really handy because you can just clip your tie-downs when you're tying the bike down in your trailer or your truck. You can just clip on your carabiners here for your tie-downs, and it just makes life that much easier because you don't have to try to wrap a strap up through the plastic and all that kind of stuff. So that's great. The turn signals, you know, we showed that in one of the earlier episodes. These are the stubby turn signals from Moto. They have running light features. They're sequential signals. They're very bright. The running lights are bright. I absolutely love these. Highly recommend those. This is a Ruby R7 headlight with a Moto-minded mask specifically for the Husky. So fits in here really well, replaces the stock headlight. The difference in lighting output is pun intended, night and day. So I forget what the lumens are on this, but it's some crazy amount of lumens. And you know, the R7 is an amazing light. I've got the amber cover because I like the way that looks, and I like the amber or yellow light versus the white light. I just think it works better. So I like that setup. I cannot recommend this enough. Ruby, I mean, there's other good options for lighting. You know, Baja Designs is great. Denali is great. But the Ruby is, you know, one of the best, if not the best out there. So really, really like that. You'll need to make sure you get the appropriate plug for your bike. The dimmer, which is like 25 bucks, I think, that makes sure that it dims with a factory switch. But highly recommend that, and make sure you get the kit that comes with the Moto-minded bracket, because otherwise things won't really line up right. So in here you can see my Tusk billet radiator guards, of course in matching blue. These are nice. They're not as strong as some other radiator guards out there, but they're adequate for my purpose. And they install very easily, and they're affordable because they come from Tusk. They're quite sturdy, and yeah, I love the way they look. They're easy to put on, so absolutely no complaints there. Let's move up here into my cockpit and controls. So in the earlier videos, I said I was going to go with a Mako bar mount. Unfortunately, there's been supply issues getting those with a Scott stabilizer mount, so I ended up going with flex bars. These are a 12-degree bar, standard height. I like to keep the standard height. And I'm a huge fan of flex bars. If you've seen my videos before on other bike builds I've done, they provide this flex, this motion right here, which is so noticeable. It provides a super comfortable, compliant ride through the front end. Really helps with the vibration as well from the motor, which is a significant issue on this bike. I love the way the flex bars work. I'm familiar with them, so I was happy to go with them. To make that work with handguards, I went with Husky D-Flex Pro handguards, which they've really improved. Like over the years, you've got these side deflectors now. They've got black bars if you want that, which I have. And these are the flex bar adapters from Husky. So these allow the handguard, the wraparound metal handguards, to mount into the flex bars and provide a pivot point. Affordable, great solution, works perfectly. So I'm really happy with this cockpit setup. The vibration, I also have the flex bar anti-vibration insert, so you have to tap the ends of the handlebar and you screw in these big metal like weighted rods that go inside here. All this together really took out, I would say, 70% of the vibration I was getting into my hands from this big 500 motor. So that was great. Now you can notice I still don't have my steering stabilizer. So one thing I'm still waiting on, there was a back order. It's just been tough to get the stabilizer set up on the new bike because the mount for that I need to work with this setup is on back order. So I might get the GPR damper instead of the Scott's. I actually have a Scott's damper for this bike. I just don't have the mount to install it. So I might go with the GPR, but that is, in my opinion, a necessary item for these because these bikes can be a little bit twitchy in certain conditions. So I'd like to have the damper, and that's a huge oversight that this bike doesn't have one yet. So that's in my build list and is something that I will be putting on. I just don't have it on right now. Some other control stuff. These are the brand new double take mirrors. So double take has now, not only do they make new mirror designs, these are I think the enduro mirrors, but they've redone the mounts. So now they make their own arms and their own ball mounts here. So no more RAM components. The benefit of these new mirrors is that they just work better. Like the ball doesn't get deformed, and it doesn't also, because there's a lock washer in here, it doesn't spin and rotate. So these will not rotate like the old ones did. They will not deform the ball from the pressure when you crank these down. And you can get different length arms and different length mirrors, different shape mirrors. Huge fan of these new double takes. They're phenomenal. I've got these Pro Taper pillow top grips. I like the cushy kind of gel feeling of these. And of course they come in blue, so that's a no-brainer for me, you know. I also underneath have the Husky grip heater pads, which the reason the wires are hanging out here is because I haven't done the wiring yet for those. It's because I just haven't had time, and it's summer now, so I don't really need them. But, you know, if you're going to do the grips, just put grip heaters under them, which you can get from Rocky Mountain for like 30, 40 bucks. And then when you have time, you know, wire them in. It's just really simple. And then put a switch, the switch will go up here somewhere in your dash. We'll talk about the get traction control and the map switch when I talk about the ECU with the stuff under the seat. So that's kind of its own thing. What else here on the cockpit? Let's see. So I decided to go with a TrailTech Voyager Pro for this bike. I've always wanted to try this unit, and it's been out for a few years. It's kind of an all-in-one bike computer, tachometer. You've got gauges you can set up. You can do temperature gauges. You know, the tach's really popular. You've got, of course, GPS. It's a GPS / bike computer / buddy tracker all in one unit, so it does everything. And you know, the cool thing about this is I only need one unit on the bike to do all this stuff. So I can load my GPS tracks in here if I need to follow a route or I'm on a dual sport ride or whatever. Then I can set up custom screens, custom information. You know, you can configure all this stuff how you want. You can also connect to your phone if you run with a comm system in your helmet. You can Bluetooth your music and control stuff through here, or your phone calls, or whatever you need to do. You know, these aren't cheap. I think these are $500 or $600, yeah, around the $600 mark, which is the same price as if you buy a Garmin Zumo XT2. But I think this is generally better. because you've got the whole bike computer stuff, and it's a little bit more specific for like dual sport bikes and the way that they've configured things. You know, it's not a gigantic screen, and the map can be a little bit small, but it's totally usable, and you could configure how you want this to look. It's got, you know, again, you can plug in all sorts of sensors to it, and it also has the buddy tracking feature. So if your buddies have this, then you have these little antennas on here that plug in, and you can all see each other on the map when you're on your trail ride. So that's super cool. It would require you all to have these, so I hope you have rich friends who can spend $600 on these units if you want to do the buddy tracking. But yeah, if you all do have it, it's a pretty cool way to go. So I really like the Voyager Pro. Now, you know, if you had a rally tower, of course you could mount it like up here, whatever. But I have it mounted on the flex bars, on the handlebars coming up through here, and that's fine. And from my riding position, I wanted to be able to still see the factory dashboard, even though it doesn't have much information. So from my riding position, I can see this and still see this. So you can play with your mounting and get that set up the way you want. But I'm super happy with the Voyager Pro. So thank you, Trail Tech, for sending out that for me to test. This is a vent line from Moto with a check valve in it, so I like that. This is the Cherokee 2.9 gallon fuel tank. We've talked about the issues with the fuel tanks on these new bikes. The fuel pickup is up in the middle under here. I've showed that in the last video, not down here where it's supposed to be or was on the previous bikes. I ran out of gas on this bike, and I don't run out of gas. Like, that's not something that I do on my rides, but I did run out of gas on this bike kind of on purpose. I had extra fuel with me. At 120 miles, right around 115, 120 miles. So, you know, that's a decent range, but really it should be 150 miles with 3 gallons. But because of the fuel pickup, it's just so incredibly dumb how they did that. I don't understand why they made that change. There are aftermarket solutions coming on board, but they're a little bit of work, they're a little bit of expense, and it's so unnecessary. Like, why can't we just go back to the way it used to be, where the pickup was down here so you could get all of your fuel out of your tank? So as it is, I'm probably going to have to upgrade this tank to like a 4-gallon tank just to give myself some extra fuel leeway or capacity there. So, you know, well, we'll talk about this in another section, but with that downgrade, in my opinion, and then the overall stiffer setup of the bike, I'm not really sure that I recommend the new generation versus the previous generation, especially if you're thinking of like upgrading, quote unquote upgrading. But anyway, we'll cover that in a separate segment because there's a lot to get into there. I've got the Golan quick disconnect fuel filter in blue, so that's an improved fuel filter. You really want to take care of your fuel filtration on these bikes. I've got the Moto mother of all oil filters, which people love to argue about online. I'm not going to take a position on good or bad. I just, it's interesting, and I am choosing to run it on my bike, so we'll just leave it at that. Now, the Enduro Hog case covers, which I don't really recommend because the other side didn't really fit right. These are something I ordered from Europe because I couldn't find any covers here from USA dealer suppliers or retailers. So those are okay, but the other side didn't fit quite right. Gearing, I'm running the stock gearing 1448, and I'm pretty happy with that. It allows me to cruise at 65 miles an hour or 100 kilometers an hour, but then it's still pretty good for single track. The Molecule skid plate is fantastic. It has the linkage guard back here, thick plastic, it glides over rocks, it's quiet, it's lightweight. These are the best skid plates in my opinion, and I've tried everything out there, so love that. I've got the factory shifter. These are the Fastway Pro Moto Billet Air EXT foot pegs. They have these ankle saver feature here, so if your foot goes like that, it's got this ankle saver device. I do like it. And this doesn't seem to get in the way or hinder normal riding whatsoever. So I'm a huge convert to these. Now you get different height pins you can put in for different amounts of traction. What I also love on these is that have adjustable heights. So depending on how you mount this bushing in here, you can move these up or down. I have them in a low position, which gives me more leg room, makes the bike more comfortable. They're expensive foot pegs, but they are worth it. They also have adjustable camber. So right here, you can adjust the washers inside there. And if you want a little bit more camber like this, you can do that. So I cannot recommend these foot pegs enough. Love those. Factory kickstand, which is a big improvement on the 2024 bikes. This is the Cerebus magnetic swing arm guards. I love these. I do have extra zip ties holding them on, but you don't have to use those. They do have magnets, so if you need to take them off to clean them, so I really appreciate that. The rear tire Tractionator, Moto Tractionator Enduro IT or intermediate terrain. The reason I don't run the soft terrain tire on the back is that it just gets torn up too fast. I think the IT matches really well to the ST on the front. Why do I not run the HT or hard terrain tire? That's because this IT tire provides a grippier traction, a softer ride. It doesn't have the life of the HT, but for more mixed conditions with some softer soils and things, I really prefer this IT to the HT tire. It's also DOT approved, which is surprising considering it's such an aggressive tire. But man, Motos makes some of the best tires. Also the Tusk rim lock, and we talked about the Takamoto wheel weights to balance that out. Some cool valves. I always recommend running valve stem caps to protect, so dust, sand doesn't get in there and open up your valve core and leak your air out. And then get valve stem caps with a valve stem remover built into them, so you've got that. The seat is a Seat Concepts Comfort XL. The XL is just these little ribs back here, which are kind of a design element, but also give you a little bit more, I guess, traction for your butt. So if you have problems with butt traction, I guess there you go. I got the yellow stripes, which, I don't know, I think this is super cool. Super comfortable. It's narrow up here, so you can still reach the ground, and it doesn't feel like too wide. But then you've got the width back here when you need to kind of relax on the road or whatnot, and get some comfort. So highly recommend that. The Moto Reckless 10, of course, goes without saying. I love this bag. Fits perfectly on here. I don't have the Noblin because they're always out of stock, so I just use the included mounts that they give you, which work fine. You can add little bags onto these because they've got the MOLLE attachment. This is the high desert colorway. I carry tools and a tube and tire irons and a little tire pump and everything I need to get myself out of the woods or out of the desert, because that's important. You don't want to die out there. So I carry stuff, and I don't want to carry it on my back. One, because of the weight on my back is too much. I like to only carry the water on my back, and plus I'm now wearing Alpinestars Tech Air off-road airbag vest, so I especially don't want the backpack stuff. Now this is not what you're supposed to do with the Nat handlebar bag, but I have it mounted clipped on back here because with the flex bars and the Voyager Pro, which I should probably turn off, with all that stuff up here, I couldn't really mount it up here anymore, so I just clipped it on back here. And I like this because I can keep my helmet cleaning stuff, my multi-tool, tire gauge, stuff like that, and that zips up. So that's not really the recommended way to use it, but get creative. That's what life is about. The all-in-one Takamoto tail tidy is fantastic. I know it's not technically like legal with the spacing of the turn signals and all that, but the truth is, if you have turn signals that come way out, they're just going to get broken off. So what's the point? So you just get this. And then the Enduro plate is fantastic. So if you have a crash or whatnot, this thing kind of will, instead of crumpling up your plate, which is a common problem, this will just magnetize back on like that, and it can move out of the way. That's super innovative. I didn't even know this existed until Mike told me about it, but I love, love, love that thing. All right, so I flipped our bike around so we can work around the right-hand side of the bike. I've got the Tusk rear disc protector in blue, of course. These are good low-cost option to help protect your rear disc. I like that. You can see we've talked about those wheel weights already. We've talked about those already. Swing arm guards, the pipe guard, which comes with a Reckless 10 bag. Talked about the foot pegs. That engine cover thing where that one bolt didn't quite work, so anyway, but that's fine. Takamoto oil filter plug, which is nice. This is one of the first things I did to the bike. This is the P3 Max Coverage header guard. I always put these on my dual sports because I've burned my pants legs like entirely through before, like ruined pants, just melted them on these pipes. So I like to protect my riding gear from that. Plus, These just make the bike look more finished, and they're worth the $150 that they cost, in my opinion. Just real quick, one more disclaimer. When you modify your motorcycle, especially some of the stuff done to this bike in terms of the ECU or engine control unit or anything that could be emissions related or exhaust related, you could potentially throw your bike out of road legal status, depending on where you live, your local jurisdictions, laws, things like that. So keep that in mind, and I'm not liable for that if you are going to do that kind of stuff. I just want to put that out there. Be mindful of that, keep that in mind, and make your own decisions, but I'm not liable if you make your bike not street legal. These bikes, for 2024, the flame out issue is a lot better, but it's still there. The bike puts out to the rear wheel somewhere, 38 to 40 horsepower for the 501 in stock form. You can bring that up to about 58 horsepower if you do the things I'm about to tell you. So I've got the Moto specially prepared Athena Get SX1 ECU with a Wi-Fi comm, also with a traction control knob and a 2-position map switch. And I combine that with the Pro Moto Billet end cap for the factory pipe with the ultra quiet insert. The ECU, when you buy the ECU from Moto, they're going to talk to them. They're going to program it for what exhaust, what bike you have to make it run optimally. The difference in power and rideability and power delivery and throttle response is night and day, and it's transformational to the motorcycle. So there's two main things that transform a bike like this. One is the suspension, two is the ECU. If you just did those two things, you would have a completely different motorcycle. Now, why do you have to spend more money on an already expensive bike? Well, this is the reality of luxury goods. Sometimes luxury goods, you just end up throwing more money at them. But at the end of the day, you have an amazing bike to ride. So the ECU is incredible. It's really easy to install. I recommend the Wi-Fi comm. And in terms of how to do it, I mean, Moto has the install video, which is really, really good. I used it myself to install it on my bike. And so that kind of stuff, go to Moto to get that information. I don't do install videos at Big Rock Moto. Now, the exhaust end cap, I chose to retain the stock pipe because there's no reason not to. The power restriction is only in the end cap of the pipe. There's no reason to get rid of this. So you change the end cap and get rid of that restriction, put the Pro Moto Billet on, and with the ultra quiet, this is as quiet or quieter than stock. Actually, I think it's a tiny bit quieter than stock. So I really like that. I recommend that. I don't like loud, but I cannot stand loud pipes on any bike. Just cannot stand them. So for me, this is perfect because it's actually even a little bit quieter than stock. This kind of points the noise like downward, and it has little holes in it, which you can't see, of course. But anyway, that works. Keep the stock pipe. The ECU, you get about 58 horsepower. You have a map switch. So there's a new version of this coming out, but map 2 is single track, or traction mode. Map 1 is race or just go like hell mode through the desert. And then the traction control is super interesting. So this traction control is super, super interesting, okay? So you have a switch here, which I like how this is designed because it goes onto your throttle right here. And you can do it with your thumb as you're riding. That's a super smart design. So you have 10-level traction control. Now, I can hear some of the older guys saying, I don't want traction control on my dirt bike, son. I've been riding since before you were born. Well, that's true, but you actually do want this because you can turn it off. There's 0, okay? Now, this is not like traction control on your adventure bike where it really intervenes and cuts your power dramatically. It doesn't work that way. And if you go full throttle, it's still going to give you full power. It just helps modulate a little bit better the wheel spin, because when you've got 58 horsepower now with the upgraded ECU, this is really nice to have. So you have 10 levels of intervention. And I'm finding personally, but maybe it's because of my riding style, I like to run it pretty high, like somewhere between 5 to 10. I've been playing with it. I went out on some really steep hill climbs and really difficult terrain, and at least for me, from my riding level, and I found this to be unbelievably helpful in modulating some of that extra wheel spin and just making the bike a little bit tamer. But if you want, you just dial it down. Man, I sure love this, but don't think it's like having that on your street bike or adventure bike where it's a safety net in terms of preventing wheel spin. It won't do that because there's no wheel speed sensors involved. You know, it's using engine sensors and things like that, and the RPM, so it's not the same idea, but it's worth the small extra cost. If you're already spending the money on the SX1 ECU, which is the best ECU to get, then just spend the extra money, in my opinion, and get the traction control. Things under the seat that you can't see right now is there's two things I want you to know that I really highly recommend you pick up from Moto. They're not expensive. One is the starting capacitor. So these bikes, if you get the battery low, which can happen, and you're in a remote area, and now you're up the creek without a paddle, right? Well, the capacitor allows you to then bump start the bike because it overrides the electrical system where it's like having a little tiny extra battery in there, sort of, and will allow you to push start it in case you needed to do that. So that's like, it's like what, $30, and it could literally like save your life, save your ride if you got stranded with a dead battery. And then the other thing is the accessory power relay harness. So if you want to plug in, like I need to do my heated grips, or if you want to run your trail tech or your GPS or whatever you might want to do, and you get a fused power circuit that comes off the battery that's all pre-wired, ready to go. So overall, the Moto electrical stuff that they make all in-house is phenomenal, and we're really lucky to have that stuff. And they honestly sell it so cheap for what it is. So I highly recommend those two items. Man, I know that's a lot, but I think that's most of the stuff that we've got on here. I probably forgot a few things. Now, like I already mentioned, there's some stuff missing that's yet to come, which is some kind of a steering damper. I feel like there was something else, but I can't remember. And then I was considering doing a rally kit for the front. I'm not sure. I'm on the fence about it because of the weight and the cost, and it really puts a lot more on the front of the bike. So let me know what you think. I was thinking about that, but I'm kind of on the fence. So, you know, Rad Garage now has a kit. There's like companies like Aurora, other ones out there. I don't know. Let me know what you think if you want me to rally it out. Other changes I might make, well, not much more, honestly. I think it's pretty well dialed. Maybe a larger fuel tank, and maybe that rally kit for some wind protection. Maybe get the navigation mounted up a little bit higher, a little bit differently. But beyond that, this bike is ready to do just about anything you want to do. So there are a couple things I forgot that I was thinking of doing later. Moto's coming out with an updated ECU with like a new map switch that also will give you quick shifter. I plan to get that because that's going to be so much fun to have a quick shifter on this bike. Wow, that's going to be awesome. So I'd love to play with that. The other thing would potentially be upgrading the wheels, the rims, just because there's some issues on the KTMs and Huskies with the durability and really rough riding with like the spokes and the nipples and the rims themselves. So you could do like a Warp 9 wheel set. And if I did that, what I would also do would be put a cush drive rear hub, because without the cush drive, you know, it's just the power transfer is kind of rough, and it will over time do more wear on your sprockets and your tires and your output shaft of your transmission. So a cush hub would be a nice thing to have. Dual sport bikes typically have them, or bikes that are meant to go on the street. It just cushions that power transfer coming out of the, you know, going into the rear wheel there from the final drive. So that's something I would look at doing in addition to the other stuff that I talked about. You know, riding this bike out here in the dirt, I mean, this is an enduro bike. It's so much more capable than I am. Man, there's nothing like riding one of these well set up 500s. I mean, there's just nothing. There's nothing that can phase it. Like, it's just, It can go through anything at almost any ridiculous speed that you might want to go. The suspension feels just totally just bottomless. Like, I'm going to switch maps here. Woo! The suspension is just bottomless. The power feels endless. The chassis is super. Holy crap. God, I can ride this thing so quick. The suspension is well controlled. You know, with these flex bars on here, it takes out a lot of this chop in the trail. Wow! So, and then the ECU just like, there's no more weird flame outs or low speed jerkiness at all. It's completely gone. Not that it was terrible on this bike to begin with. And then there's a big difference between the maps, so that's good. And you've got your traction control, which I can move with my thumb. I mean, it has everything a man could ever want, or woman, right? Whoa! Jesus Christ! Like, I don't even have to slow down for all these big... Like, you can't bottom it. Holy crap. Jeez, I can ride this thing quick. My God. It's so much fun, you guys. You have to ride it to totally understand. But, you know, the difference between this and the stock bike is just, it's just night and day. Night and day. You can ride so much faster, so much more confidence. Suspension is amazing. The flex bar, the cockpit setup is super plush. Now, when you're standing up and riding, you know, you don't really care about the vibration coming up through the seat because you're not feeling that and you're not on the highway. I mean, the tires work great. I've got all the protection I need. This thing is great. I mean, the bike's pretty much dialed except for the steering damper, which I do feel this bike needs. You can play with the fork height to get more or less stability, sharpen the steering, making the steering slower. You can play with your sag, but my word, this thing is just an absolute... It's an animal, but it's a controlled animal. And with the traction control, you can dial that in. And a map switch, you can dial that in. It's primo. It's primo. You know, when I'm out here enjoying it and just whooping it up, I'm not thinking about the money that goes into it. I'm just thinking about, man, this thing is so good. All right, we should talk about the cost of doing all this. A few things to keep in mind. You know, labor costs can vary. I didn't have labor costs because I did everything myself, except for like valving and spring and the suspension, which Frontline Suspension and Moto did. But everything else I did the labor myself, so I saved the money there. I don't get special deals when I buy these bikes, so I paid pretty much a normal price for the bike, and my dealer treats me well, but anyway, the bike was somewhere around $13,000 plus tax and fees. I forget exactly what it came to, but it was somewhere in that range. And then I'm going to put this up on the screen here somewhere. It may take up the whole screen, so I apologize because there's a lot of stuff, or maybe we'll break it into two pieces, but I have a spreadsheet with all the costs of doing all this, and you know, a couple things I'll say, like, it's a lot of money. It's $8,000, the total of all the upgrades. So if you add that to the price of the bike, this is an over $20,000 dual sport build, which seems excessive, and to some people it definitely would be, although there are customers who want something like this and who do ride bikes like this, and this is great if you want that. But I totally understand that's a crazy amount of money for a lot of people. I totally get that. But this is supposed to show what's possible, not necessarily be a budget build, if that makes sense. Now, most of you out there probably don't keep a spreadsheet of all the little add-ons you do to your own motorcycles. If you did, I think they would probably total more than you think, just because you kind of lose track in your head of how much that adds up to. But anyway, you know, the big ticket items here, the SX1 ECU with all the Wi-Fi and the map switch and the traction control, that's a big ticket item. That's over $1,000. The suspension is, you know, somewhere around $1,000 to have that work done, maybe a little more, maybe a little less. You know, the steering damper, which actually isn't on the bike right now because I'm still waiting for the mount, that's 800 bucks. The Voyager Pro GPS is 600 bucks. The flex bars are 400. So those are some of the bigger ones. But then all that $100 to $300 stuff and even smaller adds up. And before you know it, you're at $8,000. Now you could totally do a bike like this and not do most of this stuff. I think if you just did, I mean, the seat is kind of a big deal because the stock one's so uncomfortable, but that's personal preference. You know, the gas tank, because the stock tank has such a limited range, the ECU makes it run so much better that it's hard to ignore that one. Good tires, a good skid plate, you know, I mean, you could get by with just a few things and probably spend, you know, I don't know, $2,000, $3,000 to get it dialed in for you and not have to go overboard with all the stuff, right? This is just meant to show what can be done. I like all the stuff on here, and I would keep all this stuff. There's nothing on here that I'm like, oh, I don't really want that, or that's not worth the money. There's really nothing on here that I feel that way about, honestly. So I don't know. Let me know down in the comments below. Good, bad, ugly, indifferent, whatever it is. Let me know what you think of the cost of this build. I'm curious to know your thoughts.
Wow, so, you know, riding this on the road with all the changes that I've made, there's a couple things that stand out. One is that there's so much less vibration now through the handlebars. What a massive improvement with the flex bars and the weight inserts from flex bar. Those are really good. Now, and then the other thing is the power. So the acceleration and the overall power delivery is dramatically improved. It's kind of a transformation. There's just so much more power here now. It's hilarious. It's really, really good. I mean, the bike, I have to be careful not to get a speeding ticket, but this bike will go very, very fast now. Now it's still, and of course we got the wheels balanced, so we don't really have the wheels bouncing. You know, it's a tolerable place if you have to spend, you know, maybe an hour or 2 hours on the highway. And with this gearing, I can go about 60 miles an hour, about 100 kilometers an hour. That's okay. Really is fine. But it's still not a good highway bike. I mean, this is an enduro bike. It doesn't want to be on the highway. It's not really in its element doing this. And there's better bikes to do this, but it can do this a little bit. The vibration coming up through the frame and the foot pegs and the seat and kind of going up through my butt and through my spine is still really bad, and is the major downside to me on this bike that I still really don't like. And we'll talk about that in other segments of this video.
All right, is there anything on this build or anything about this bike? Everything on the build is great, honestly. The only thing I just need to add, the steering damper. The build is perfect. What about the bike itself? Yeah, there's a number of things actually I don't like about the bike itself. The 2024, I'm not convinced that this really was an upgrade because they messed up the fuel pump location, so now you can't get to all the fuel. We talked about that. They made the bike kind of stiffer. The frame is stiffer, the suspension's stiffer, and it's more of a rough ride, and I don't know that that's the right approach. I'm not sure. It just feels to me like it's just too stiff. Of course, my bike has suspension done, and then I've got well, that's a big B. I've got the flex bars, which smooth it out, all that kind of stuff, but I don't know. And then the 500, there's too much vibration in my opinion. I just don't like bikes that vibrate this much. I feel it coming up through my butt, through my spine, they're like drills into my head. I've got it out of the handlebars pretty good with what I've done, but I just would prefer the 350 for less vibration. The 350 motor seems to vibrate less. The Honda 450 vibrates less. The KTM 690, although that's more of an adventure bike, I don't like the vibration, and it's the only downside to me of this package, but it's a big downside for me personally. Now, we're kind of alluding to it, but what about versus the 350, whether it's a Husky or KTM? for me personally, I like the 350 a lot better. I've had the 350, that was my last one, and I just felt that that engine is better power delivery for single track and enduro riding. Yeah, you don't have the outright power for like maybe open desert kind of race stuff, but everywhere else it just felt better. Also, the vibration was much less, and I felt like the bike handled a little better with that smaller piston going up and down because there's less inertia or whatever in the engine. So I would buy the 350 every day of the week now that I've had kind of both back to back. Again, just my opinion, but let me know what you think about that. Some comparisons to other bikes. What are KTM versus Husky? So, you know, I'm just gonna tell you what I think. I think KTM is the way to go. Well, for me it is, and here's why. I prefer the rear suspension on a KTM is the PDS, Progressive Damping System. It doesn't have the linkage. There's a couple things I like about that. I feel like the ride is smoother and more supple over like rocks and bumps. It makes maintenance easier to get the shock out and do stuff. It's so much faster. You don't have all the stupid linkage in the way. There's better ground clearance. There's less bushings and moving parts, and it's lighter. So to me, that's just superior. And this is fine, this works great, and it might be better for riding fast. Some people say that, but I would get the KTM. I think the PDS is awesome, and I would prefer that. So if I was buying a bike today, I'd get the KTM and I'd get the 350, not the 500. So anyway, what about versus the Honda 450RL? So I need more time with that. So I do have a 450RL. Honda's lent that to me now for 6 months. So I've got the next 6 months to use that bike and see what I really think of it. The Honda's heavier. It's a bit more stable, a bit more refined. It's quieter, it's smoother, there's less vibration. I think it's a better dual sport bike. This is a better enduro bike or dirt bike. This is lighter, faster. You can get more power out of this with the ECU. Maintenance is about the same between the two. Reliability, there's no data, but people will say the Honda is more reliable. Overall, for me and how I ride, because I'm kind of old and kind of fat and I'm slow and I'm not really an enduro guy anyway, I would go for the Honda for sure, just right now. But with this build out and this setup, this thing is freaking amazing. So that's kind of a tough one, but the Honda's really appealing. But I stay tuned on that because I'm doing a series with the Honda now that they've lent that to me for 6 months, and we could do some more detailed comparisons between kind of Honda, KTM, and Husky, and even Beta. What about versus a KTM 690? I mean, that gets into a whole nother discussion because the 690 is like 80 to 100 pounds heavier than this, and it doesn't have the suspension travel. It's more of that dual sport or light adventure bike with some travel thrown in, travel capability. I mean, going down the highway at 70, that new 690 motor is glass smooth with the twin bouncers. It's an amazing road bike in that regard. You've got the ABS, you've got the traction control, you have much longer maintenance intervals, so it's a whole different ball game. It's not really an enduro bike like this is, but for me, from what I said earlier, being old and fat and slow, and I like more touring kind of riding, I would take the 690. I prefer that, which is not what I said a few years ago, but it's what I'm saying now. Maybe it's because I'm getting older and fatter, I don't know. But I just like the 690. I'm not doing extreme enduro stuff, but if you are doing that hardcore enduro stuff and you want I mean, it's hard to argue with 100 pounds less weight. That's a huge deal with this. And you just can't get the 690 off-road to work like one of these. But on the road, the 690 is pretty amazing, and this thing sucks on the road, and the maintenance is way different. So you have to make that decision, but they're both amazing motorcycles. All right, well, I truly hope this video has been useful and informative and fun to watch and all that kind of good stuff. If it was, please let me know. If you have questions, concerns, comments, hate mail, comments about my hairstyle, about the way I dress, about you know, my weight, anything like that, please feel free to put that below, and I know you will. But I really appreciate all of you watching and supporting, commenting, interacting with this channel, and allowing me to do this kind of stuff for a living. Again, if you need anything, let me know down below. If you want to support the kind of independent reporting I'm doing here, please, you know, use the affiliate links, join Patreon, do all that kind of stuff, and there's ways to do that down below. And if you're buying parts for your dual sport bike, please use my affiliate links, which are in all the videos in a pinned comment and a description. Other than that, thank you so much for watching. Please ride safe, and I'll see you out there.